Welcome one-on-one. I'm Steve Adubato from the Tisch WNET studio. Once again, you saw him in the open we have. He's here right now. It's Chris Cuomo, anchor of CNN's Cuomo Prime Time every night, 9 p.m. Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you, Doctor.
Good to see you, buddy. You know, I'd love to have you on where we can talk about fun things, Italian life growing up in a family.
Me too.
Yeah, we can't, though. We're doing this, we're taping, you'll see it on the screen, December the 4th. Put things in perspective. You were talking about Tonight Show. Look at Tonight Show and moving forward. For the next 3 to 6 months, are we going to be talking about the same thing?
3 to 6 months? I don't think so, because the Democrats seem to be in a hurry. I think it's one of the biggest points of vulnerability for them in this process is the speed, what they explain as the alacrity. But just because you use a big word doesn't change the idea. Why so fast? Their better argument is that they are being stymied, that well, you won't give us, you won't produce, and the litigation is really a distraction, and we don't need it. So that's why we're just doing this at the pace at which we find, not rushing. The argument that they're rushing suggests what? Well, maybe the truth, which is they're making a political calculation, which is not wrong. This is a political process, but they want to get this done quickly enough.
Impeachment is a political process.
It is inherently, by definition, and with all expectations, political. To even compare it, well, you know, in a court of law, Steve, we would, but the founders knew that it was different. That's why they didn't list homicide, kidnapping, and burglary as what they wanted investigated.
But they listed bribery,
right,
and
treason and other high crimes and misdemeanors, but they did so in clear historical context to an impeachment that they were watching at the time when they were in the convention and doing the thinking around this, which is, of course, a very protracted process. And they were mirroring what was happening in the state of reflection, which was the UK. And what they were trying to do was capture the same kind of perfidy, the faithlessness, the breach, the abuse of power that they saw being tried in England. That's what they wanted to catch. You're abusing your job, you're doing it for your own interests, and you're involving foreign powers. That makes it the worst.
Chris, let me ask you this. You and I have talked offline a fair amount, and I let you know what I'm thinking as I'm watching you. And I'm always amazed that you're able to, it seems like you're tweeting while you're doing the show, but you're not. It's during the breaks.
Yeah, depends.
But here's the thing.
No, yeah,
here's
during
the
the breaks.
I often do wonder this. For you, personally and professionally, is there a part of you that says, I'm getting tired of doing this?
I'm tired of doing it, no.
Of Trump?
No. I think
no part of you?
No, I think it's really important, only because you're coming at it the wrong way for me individually. I'm not tired of it. There's zero quit in me. I think the opportunity is so precious. That's what Let's Get After It is all about.
The responsibility.
I'm 100%. I mean, this period in history is going to be what's remembered in my professional life.
How did Chris Cuomo, all of us, but in your case, Chris Cuomo, handle this time in history?
Yeah.
Did he step up?
Yeah. How will you be remembered? And I'm not saying something about some vain legacy.
We all have a responsibility.
This matters this time. What did you do? Now, is it way more punishing than I ever anticipated? And do I sometimes wonder if it is worth it?
On a personal level?
Yes.
You've been attacked personally.
100%.
You've become part of the story. Are those times with your children, your family, do you say, hey, wait a minute?
More than I've ever dealt with in my life, more than I've ever anticipated, more than I would have ever imagined, and more than I can rationalize. This president, now, anybody who watches my show, I take great pains to be fair on my show, to have his side represented, to have their arguments exposed, test them one way or the other, do so with decency. It is not always easy. This president has been personally mean to me and my family. He retweeted one of his foot soldiers taking a shot at my mother not too long ago. That's who he is. That's who he's always been. There is no change in this president from the man I've known most of my adult life. He has been mean to me, he has put my family at risk, and he knows it.
But that's not who he was when you were growing up, knowing him as a kid.
100% is who he was. If you weren't giving him what he wanted, he would do whatever he had to do. He was rough on my father, he was rough on my brother, he was rough on local politicians.
But didn't have this power.
He was rough on his wives. You know, anybody who he was sideways with, I'm not saying abusive, but sideways with, he'd attack.
Yeah, and that is, by the way, read Wayne Barrett and a bunch of other people who've written about him extensively back in the day. But that being said, having the power to do that as president, totally different.
Yeah, because what happens is he thinks it's just a fair exchange. You know,
You hit me, I hit you harder.
That's right.
And Chris, come on, you're tough. You're a guy. You're physical. Come on, stop being a baby.
And he's 100% right, except the millions and millions of people who take what he says as gospel. You know, people say he's so full of himself. I see it the opposite way. I don't think he understands his power and his reach. When he says it's okay to call me some Italian slur and see me as the enemy of the people, now you've got millions of people who are looking at you sideways where I live. You know, I'm mostly out on the island, which is a very mixed, my family is mixed, my friend group is mixed, and you know, there are at least real conservatives and Republicans. You know, they're not all into Trump.
My friends, same thing.
But now my life is, thank God for my size. Thank God for my physicality. Because I see guys all the time who are looking at me like, there he is. And then I come walking in, they're like, oh, he's a little bit bigger than I thought.
Hold on, then you're the enemy. Like, to them, you're not just the philosophical, ideological, politically with a certain point. Or just with CNN, right? Whatever.
I've never gotten threats like this in my life. I've never had stuff sent to me online like this. My kids, my daughter getting accosted in person. I mean, this is new and bad. Now, that said, this is an amazing opportunity. I understand the state of play, and I expose myself to it. Where my wife smacks me on this is, you're no victim. You asked for this. Now, I would argue she's wrong, but that's always a mistake.
I agree.
I put myself in the position to be scrutinized by the president and his people.
To this degree.
I think it offends any sense of fairness. I certainly would never do or say anything. And that idea, Steve, alone, that I have to, as a journalist, scrupulously adhere to a standard that is above our president is laughable. Laughable.
And the other thing, I don't want to complicate things, but you and I have talked about this in the other times you've been here. Because your dad was such, obviously, a huge part of your life and your siblings. But for me, journalistically, I told you, the last interview I did with him back in the early 2000s, just an extraordinary impact on me as a journalist, and just as an Italian American. We've been through that. Your dad lived his public life in a very different way, which clearly influences you, your brother, your siblings, et cetera. Does that make it even worse because you come from a public family? People say, oh, it's politics. It's all the same. Everyone's nasty. This is different.
I think it is offensive to public service. I think back to the days of what my father was criticized for in terms of, you know, how he took the argument to the media, et cetera, how he dealt with opposition. And look, it's all fair. You want to enter the game, you're going to get scrutinized. But everybody knows this is different. What is interesting to me is how people decide to handle it. I think it's been interesting to watch the media police its own more so than the offending parties.
What does that mean, police our own?
That if you get into it with somebody right now, you have a better chance of having the media come at you and say, well, he's become what he opposes, and he's just as bad as... Yeah, but since when we were on equal footing with people who have the power, who were put into positions of power and trust. I think that this time is going to be very interesting 20 years from now about people saying, well, wow, that was a real cataclysm. And I don't mean that in some scary way. I don't think that we are on the road to any kind of ruin.
Well, how do we get past this?
I mean, I think...
If Donald Trump...
I can't be talking to you. I'm saying you're the historian. You've seen all this stuff on the history of leadership.
I'm just older than you. If Donald Trump wins again, this impeachment process plays out, and we expect, okay, fine.
He gets impeached, he doesn't get removed.
Because the Senate's the Senate, and the numbers are what they are. Okay, he wins again in 2020. What do you think? Forget about Democrats, Republicans. It's not how you and I view things. What do you think it means for the Republic?
I think that if you look at the moves in history, you see that great change only comes bottom up, not top down. So unless you have some kind of resulting movement, either in great support of the changes he wants to bring to society or in revulsion to them, and I mean that in a very pacifistic way, you know, I mean that there's some real within the means, you know, because violence gets nobody anywhere, and it just assures that whatever you're fighting for dies faster. But I think that you see more of the same. Some people say he'll be worse than ever. I don't think so. I think if he were to win again, he'll start to become legacy conscious, and he'll start to think about, well, let me start cutting some deals, because you got to remember who he is, Steve. He's not Dr. Adubato, where once he has good reason to be upset about something, he's upset until the facts change. This man is not burdened by principle other than self-preservation. So once it becomes about his legacy, he comes back to Adubato and be like, hey, look, you and I had our issues. And meanwhile, he's done like the worst things imaginable to you for months at the biggest stage in the world. But I want to try to get something right here now. So what do you want? What can we do?
Transactional.
He is
Purely
100% transactional unless he doesn't see it as good for him. Now, that's a meaningful distinction. Clinton was transactional.
Very.
He's getting impeached. He's cutting deals. Why? Because he thought that was more in his benefit. He could see past the pain.
Trump is different how?
It's all about him. So if you're coming at him, he can't see past that. When people have said, are you going to work with the House right now? What does he say? No. No way. They're going to do this? No way. Clinton took a different path. He got the highest numbers of his job performance during the impeachment process. You all right? Sorry.
Yeah, I was looking forward to this interview. And
no more?
No, I am. I'm glad you came in.
A lot of my subjects feel like that.
No, real quick before I let you go, the Rudy interview. I actually remember texting you that night. A lot of people, I'm sure, did. How significant was the Rudy interview for you that night and beyond?
That night, not so much.
Did you know it was happening when it was happening?
You know, look, you're such a great interviewer because you're an active listener. In the moment, you don't really know what something is or how it's going to be perceived. You just know where it is in that moment. But here's where the team was right. When he said, Mr. Giuliani, so quickly, yes, I'll come on, because he had been not coming on for weeks. And I thought to myself, oh, that's weird that I got such a quick yes there. And then we started to think about, well, why would he have said yes so quickly? And we guessed, oh, I know what this is. This is the window of opportunity for him to do in fulsome fashion what he's been hinting at, which is you want to talk about a phone call between the two presidents, you're missing the whole picture. The whole picture is so we prepared for the Bidens and the Ukraine conspiracy, and that just happened to be the right guess. So I was fine with it. I didn't expect the personal animus.
Really personal.
I've never seen the mayor that way. I have tremendous respect for him.
You didn't hit him back personally. You never do.
It's not what I'm about.
You never do.
And frankly, I don't think that's what he's about either. And I don't like being sideways with him personally or is perceived that way by his people. I don't like that. He's welcome on my show. I wish him well. I don't like to see people being investigated. But we knew it was coming. I was hoping to get him to just reveal their actual inclinations. And he did.
He did.
And that made a difference
changed
because
the
we
public
saw in an
conversation.
op-ed not soon thereafter that 7 holdouts went for impeachment because of what he said.
Real quick, Jen, what do you want? Want me to ask you about Bloomberg? Really, this show is going to be seen in a few months. Is it still going to be relevant? I'm sorry. I don't know.
I don't see it.
You don't see it?
Bloomberg's a lot smarter man than I am. He's welcome on the show to make the case to his
wealthier
people.
than all of us together and everyone at
100%.
PBS.
How he made his money matters also, and shows a facet of the American dream.
Yep.
And the burden of
Entrepreneur.
work and being smart and being driven, all good messages. What is his path? Because he didn't have one when he looked at it the first time. What changed? Just a weak field? Perceived how? I think he's got to explain it, and I think he has to let the American people know. Why me personally? You got to win that who do you want a beer contest, or you don't win any contest.
True. Hey, Chris would be fun to have a beer with.
Tequila.
Don't work out with him.
Tequila's my thing.
The tequila's your thing?
Only.
You work out I'm not even talking about your ridiculous workout routine.
I bang my head against the wall. Does that count as exercise?
Yeah, okay. Chris Cuomo, every night, CNN, 9 o'clock. Check him out. And thank you for joining us again, my friend.
Doctor, always a pleasure. I love you.
You guys, same here. Steve Adubato, Chris Cuomo, check us out right after this. Thank you, buddy.
Autism is one of the fastest-growing developmental disorders in the U.S. Here in New Jersey, 1 in every 41 children is diagnosed with autism. And when a child is diagnosed with autism, every member of the family is affected. While there currently is no cure for autism, early detection and intervention can offer critical improvements for the child and tremendous benefits for the family. To learn more about autism, contact the Binder Autism Center at St. Joseph's Children's Hospital.
Also brought to you by Summit City MD, a provider of primary, specialty, and urgent care. Gibbons PC, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield of New Jersey. And by IBEW Local 102, lighting the path, leading the way.